Hey everybody, this is long requested passing guide. It will be split across 3 parts. I'll be doing passing guide for early game, mid game, and late game. Because like doing one guide would be like too fat. It would be the video would take like 3 hours literally. So I'm gonna split it apart. So the 4 and most important thing to do for the passing guide, you go into options and you go here in the general and you disable this. Yeah, done. This is the first most important thing. So what this does, it makes your opponent, it makes you autopass if you have no play, which doesn't allow you to bluff. Bluffing in LOR is very important. So next thing, what do you want to do? Being aware, like when you go into the matchup, you have to be aware of the opponent's deck, of opponent's win con and threats each turn. So basically, when do you pass on turn 1? If you are, let's say, playing a deck that's playing like a Teemo, it's playing like Zoe, and you can back those win cons, because those are semi-win cons, that in some matchups they'll lead you into winning the game. So when you don't play Teemo or Zoe turn 1, so you don't play Zoe Teemo turn 1 when you are playing against, let's say, the deck that plays PNZ and they can beam your threat, and you are not playing and you are not attacking on turn 1. If you are attacking on turn 2, you want to play, let's say, Zoe on turn 2, because then opponent has to spend 3 mana to kill her, not only 1. And then, like, he's losing already a tempo and you are getting tempo advantage. So it's already good. Same with Teemo, right? And on top of that, if you are playing, let's say, a Zoe deck, or Teemo with the Freljord version, which runs Elixir or Troll Chant, then against decks like SI, you're gonna be able to back it up with Troll Chant on turn 2 or Spell Cascade if you are playing Zoe. If you play Zoe turn 1 and then if you are attacking on turn 2, opponent Valfis, you play Pale Cascade, you don't draw a card. And there was no reason to play Zoe turn 1, literally no reason to, right? It's better to keep the play for the next turn and follow it up, right? Why do we pass turn 1? To basically bank the mana and get the action and just wait for the next turn. Also, if you are playing, let's say, as Draven deck, it's very worthwhile to keep the mana, like pass turn 1, pass turn 2, due to the mana bankage, right? Because what the deck does usually, even though you have Ballistic Bot or House Spider in your hand, in some matchups, let's say if you're playing into mirror matchup, it's worth to not play anything if you have, let's say, your hand would be Beam, House Spider, Draven, and you're playing mirror matchup. So if you play House Spider into Draven and you are attacking on turn 3, then you cannot, like, and opponent plays counter Draven, you have only 1 mana left. That means opponent can block your 1/1 spider, can block your 2/2 spider. If you try to axe and kill the spider, opponent's spider, he still have 3 mana and he can use like Mystic Shot and you're gonna be losing cards and tempo there. So it's better to, if you play your Draven, even if you have beam, then if opponent plays his own Draven, then you can beam it, or thing like bluffing comes into the play. So even if you don't have beam, like if you play Draven, you can bluff beam. So your opponent would be forced to play something worse, like House Spider for defense. So he would be not worried about his threat getting beamed. Yeah. Bluffing comes into the play, but later once you already know what's opponent's threats and once you are playing against, like, remember to not over bluff stuff. Bluff only when you think it will give you better odds of winning, because bluffing, people are not that good in the game yet, and they will not pay attention that you are keeping mana for something. At the higher level, they do, but most of the time, people, you can't really bluff fishes, yeah? So you have to be aware of that. But sometimes, like, if you like, okay, if I don't bluff here, I'm gonna literally lose. So it's better to bluff than to do something. Just do it. All right. Overall, with the deck, like, let's say, if you're playing, let's say, against Trundle Lissandra control, it's better as for, say, if you're playing Zoe deck, right? Let's say Diana Zoe, yeah? So this deck can actually level up Zoe quite easily. So here, it's worth to keep your mana open to bluff stuff like Pale Cascade, to bluff like if you play like Star Chart, if you play like Sketcher, to keep up mana open for stuff like Spell Shield, etc. So opponent have to upkeep mana to potentially kill your Zoe. So basically playing turn 1 Zoe, passing on even when you draw like, let's say, Lunari Shadestalker, Goat or Diana turn 2, it's better not to play them and just upkeep mana for Zoe Star Charts to just invoke stuff, because you have to realize in that matchup, it's not about early game damage, because they're gonna heal that damage through. So you have to realize in that matchup, your win con is different even in other matchups. You're playing against control deck. So you should be using your resources to progress towards your win con. And in this matchup, your win con would be playing Star Shaping or Mountain Scryer and fighting a big elusive. So big elusive would be like the premium targets is Phoenix and Great Beyond. So you look in one of these. The third best is Destroyer, yeah? And basically what you're looking for is just attack with those ones when they are already buffed for each Celestial card plate, and then using Atrocity on one of them and finishing your opponent. So what progress towards that win con is basically playing Zoe, invoking as much, and finding and buffing up those elusives. People usually misplay with the deck and they try to Star Chart into like multiple answers to the Watcher, and they clamp their hand with like Equinoxes, Crescent Stance, and basically they lack hand space at some point. And opponent in this matchup will usually just rush you. They will not even play Watcher. They'll just rush you because you are upkeeping your mana and you are invoking useless stuff that you won't be able to use. So you should basically in this matchup play proactively, not reactively. When we talked about proactive and reactive gameplay during the Mulligan guide, yeah? So just progress your invokes ASAP in this matchup. You're looking for like Solari Priestess, Scryer, and invoke stuff. Alright, there is also, you have to take in consideration with what deck archetype you want to pass and when, right? So let's say if you are playing an aggressive deck that wants to curve out, like mainly uses his unit mana early, not a spell mana. So this type of deck will usually try to play turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5 stuff. And they're not gonna be upkeeping mana because they want to puke out their hand ASAP, yeah? And they just swarm you. So there you usually don't pass. So unless, like if you are playing, let's say, aggro spiders or discard aggro, and you are playing against control deck that you know can wipe your board on turn 3, turn 4. So when you have already enough threats, make sure you, like, if you have a full board of 1 HP units, let's say you are playing discard aggro, then you can't really play around AoE from the SI deck because your entire unit can die on the fast speed spell like Ice Shard or Whale. You need to make sure you spread out HP of the threats. So the best case would be like you having like 2 maybe units with 1 HP and 1 3 HP unit, so they cannot get blown out by one spell. Yeah, and you can start passing, like make sure you don't overcommit to the board against like AoE removal decks because you're just gonna run out of the gas. You have to be smart about your threats and how do you want to put them. Like basically you don't put entire army and you don't send them on at one way because they can just get blown out by one rock. Yeah. So when do you want to pass with the control decks? So basically this is the easiest passing, maybe not easy, but this is the most deck that you're gonna be passing with. Deck archetype. Yeah. You want to be passing basically to see what all kind of opponent threat will be played and what kind of removal you need to play. Basically, if his removal is just board of 1 HP units and you have like, let's say, Ice Shard or Whale, you can just not do anything and wait till they attack and then play the removal. Yeah, you don't really care about responding to those unless they, you know, the deck is running like buffs from the hand. Let's say Pale Cascade as a Nightfall aggro, or sharp side as a damage decks like scouts. So you have to pay attention to what you are playing against, because if you are playing like, let's say, against scouts, it's better to play units and force the combat tricks for the combat, so your removal will be more effective. Yeah. Also, like, you have to be aware that like when you're playing a control deck, opponent is on a clock. He has to risk developing into removal. So basically, opponent has to play like you don't have it, and if you don't have it, they're gonna usually win. But if you have it, they're just gonna concede when you, like, let's say they play 4 units into your Avalanche on turn 3, you Avalanche and you just concede because they played YOLO, you had the answer, and basically that's game, yeah? So basically, when you reach, like, when you have turn 1, turn 2, on turn 2, you don't, against aggro decks, you don't play Sentry unless they played like a unit 3-2 goat, let's say, and it's already trading very well. So yeah, this is a good answer. But usually you don't play Sentry on 2 if you have, let's say, Avalanche or Ravine in your hand, because you're gonna be playing those as a removal on turn 3 or 4. And then afterwards, you can play Sentry as a blocker. So effectively, you just don't want to blow out your own blockers with your own removal, if you can just hold on. Because remember, you have cards like Ravine. So basically, you can take a bit of damage early game, because you know, heal this damage back. Or Whale, Valfist. You don't have to worry about taking damage, because HP is a resource in the game. Basically, by using HP as a resource, you make opponent to overcommit on the board, because they are aware you have healing, and they need to be faster, because if they're gonna go too slow, they won't have a chance at winning. So basically, by forcing your opponent to go faster, they run into your removal, and that's how they lose, the aggro decks. Against mid-range decks, you have to play more units and less removal, because your removal is not as effective. Also, you can, the other alternative strategy would be keeping multiple AoE removals to chip away the opponent's board. So let's say if they have 4 or 5 HP, you can play like Ravine into Avalanche on turn 5, and then have a setup like Ice Shard or Valfist on their open attack next turn when their units are already 1 HP. And then you are going into your big turns afterwards.